Okay, here we are again. I'm going to do another lesson where I'm going to be showing you different concepts regarding time. And this is specifically about halftime, regular time, and double time. I feel like this is an area that is not properly explained or addressed in many education situations, so I kind of felt like this would be a good video to cover in a lesson. You may notice that I'm also going to include some accompaniment where I will be playing bass along with the drum beats that I play in this video. That's just a way for you to put it in context, so it's not just the drums, and it'll just give it a little bit more depth. I really want you to focus on what the drum beat is doing so you can see what the feel is there, and you can start to decipher the difference between regular time and halftime and double time. As much as I can, I'm going to try to not change the bass too much, but the bass will kind of reflect what is happening as far as recognizing the regular time or the halftime or the double time feel whenever possible. Most of the playing that'll be on the bass is going to just be as an accompaniment so that it's not just drums on this video. I got my metronome ready to go, my metronome app that you all know that I really dig. And we're starting with 90 beats per minute. When you have regular time, the quarter note is just the quarter note. There's 4 beats to the measure, and as the click goes by, each click gets a quarter note value. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if I was going to apply this to the drum set, it's pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. Eighth notes on the hi-hat, really simple kick pattern, and snare on 2 and 4. That's what's considered regular time because we're just playing with the regular pulse. What I realized several years ago as a drummer is the big difference between regular time and double time and halftime is where you're laying down the backbeat. When we say backbeat, we're always referring to where the snare is being laid down. So even though the tempo, the pulse is still being implied by the metronome that we're following, in this case just for educational purposes, where the snare, backbeat, is being laid down is implying whether it's regular time, halftime, or double time. The kick drum is a very close second to what's happening in the snare drum, but what you're playing on the snare drum, that dictates whether you're playing in regular time or halftime or double time. The pulse is always moving along at the same rate. We are treating the pulse that we're getting, in this case from the metronome, we're treating it differently. When we go into halftime, the pulse is still coming at us at the same rate, but we're making that pulse the new eighth note so that we can displace the snare to make it hit on beat 3, and that's implying a halftime feel. It's implying that everything is going half as slow, exactly half as slow. So I'm going to show you the difference between playing regular time and halftime at 90 BPM. 1, 2, ready. Now, I purposely didn't change the kick drum pattern, even though it feels kind of wonky to just hit it on beat 3 along with the snare, but I wanted to show that the really important difference there was what was happening in the snare drum. What I would normally do is displace the kick a little tiny bit. I'd make it on the upbeat of beat 2 to kind of set up the snare that's coming on beat 3, and that's really going to solidify the halftime feel. So that's a really simple, basic way of looking at regular time versus halftime. So if we go the opposite direction and we double up the snare so that we have an implied double time feel, what we're actually going to do is make all the snares on the upbeats of those quarter notes to make it feel as though we're going double the speed while the pulse from the metronome stays the same. 1, 2, ready. Now it does feel kind of weird that it's sort of like a polka type of a feel. So let's further explore this idea between regular, half, and double time at a different tempo. I'm going to slow my metronome down a lot to a much slower tempo. So we're at a much slower tempo of 70, and I'm going to put clicks on beats 1 and 3 just so it makes it a little bit more clear when I'm playing those different time feels between regular, half, and double time. So it's more easy to notice the difference in the snare drum and the feel itself rather than it being every single beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what's the difference that I did there? Because it's at a slower tempo, I decided to go into 16th notes on the hi-hat. I felt like that made a lot more sense to make it not so feeling like a polka, which is a boom ba boom ba boom ba. I didn't want to make it feel that way, which is what it felt like earlier at 90 BPM. There are ways that you can change the hi-hat and definitely the kick, but really the most important aspect of it that's really going to make a difference as a drummer is where you're laying down the backbeat. Now, as you could hear, I did some other things with the kick to try to complement where the snare is, but what's really important is where the snare is because that really lines up where everything else is going to be. Along those same lines, if you want to be way more challenged, you take away those other beats and you make it just the first click of every measure so that it forces you to be a lot more honest with where the time is and follow it that way. We're going to play it again, and this time we're going to make the hi-hat only hit quarter notes, so with the pulse of the metronome, and we're going to make the kick only hit on the first beat, and it's only going to be where the snare is that's going to show you whether it's regular time, half time, or double time. In that respect, I'm only going to make it beat 1 of every measure. very simplistic way of playing that sort of concept. I understand, and it's probably going to be really rare that you use that sort of beat in a musical context. But if you want to be challenging yourself musically and with your time and with the difference between feeling these different types of feels, that's a great exercise. If you want to just really stretch yourself and force yourself to be subdividing those beats in your mind and not speed up, not slow down. Keeping the tempo, keeping the pulse on your hi-hat, and then just doing the accompaniment in the kick and the snare, and coming up with variations of that also. But that's meant to be just a way to really zero in on it and see if you can do it just like that. Now I'm going to do another type of example, but this time with a different tempo. I moved the metronome to 120, and instead of focusing on the hi-hats for this one, it's going to be more of a tom beat that's going to go along with the metronome, just so you can see the difference between what we have going on with the snare in comparison to the rest of the beat, to give you a better idea of the difference between regular time and halftime. I will show you what's going on with a metronome set at 120, different tempo, and you'll see the difference between regular time and halftime with a tom feel. Again, the main difference that you're going to notice that's going to stick out at you, or that should stick out at you, is the snare. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty obvious thing where it's not a drum beat specifically, but it's really more like a tom kind of a feel. And what's happening in the toms is largely the same. A lot of action going on, but where the snare is, that's where it changes how it feels, because the backbeat is being displaced from 2 and 4 over to beat 3, which it gives that halftime implication. I'll show you a different example at 105. Similar thing. Now I'm going to show you a different type of a feel where in the hi-hat it's going to be open, close, like a disco type feel, and 4 on the floor in the kick drum. I changed the metronome to 130 for this one. I'm going to keep those things the same. Pay attention to where the snare is, and that's where it's going to change how it feels. 1, 2, 3. That's pretty clear there what's happening, because I got the hi-hat going and it's that whole disco type bouncy feel. Now I'm going to show you a similar type of feel where it's going to be that disco type feel that I was playing with the hi-hat and the kick being the same thing over and over again, and show you the difference between regular time and halftime, but also we can apply it to double time too. 1, 2, ready, and... So again, it really clearly implies the regular time, the halftime, and the double time. All right, so thanks so much for your time and for joining me today. Please check out all my other lesson videos that I have set up. I enjoy making these and I hope that people get something out of them and actually use them. Thanks so much. Take it easy. See you next time. Peace.